Good morning. I've been asked several times to make some of my videos. I've been doing videos like for different nations, right? And I've been asked several times to do for minor nations. I've been asked specifically to do the best possible competitive Danish list and the best possible Greek list. The issue is that it's not really possible. When we're talking minor nations, there are several things that really prohibit them being used as a competitive choice. You can use them for other reasons, which I would highly encourage. They're good for fluff. They're good for flavor. They're good for challenges if you want to challenge yourself. They're a good painting challenge. Often, sometimes it's nice to use your own home nation. For those of us who lived in one of those minor nations who was only really part of the Second World War for like 1 day, 5 hours or something, until we got occupied. So for those reasons, minor nations are cool. They are awesome. If you win games using a minor nation, you definitely win the respect of your peers. But the choices are limited, and that is what makes them not competitive. The first thing that makes them not competitive. If you look at most minor nations at their roster, it is not very fleshed out, and that's of course because they historically had very, very small armies. They were not major powers. They were not so they didn't have all those units that the other powers do, and they were not that interesting, most of them. The units were not very good, mostly. But if you look at one minor nation that did very well in World War II, then take Finland, for instance. Finland made a name for itself during World War II. So we know that Warlord Games is able to create minor nations that can be interesting and that can be competitive, because Finland is very competitive. I would actually not put it in the minor nation category at all. I would say that they're the second most competitive Axis nation. Japan being the first, and Finland the second, Germany the third. Really, really interesting list you can do with the Finns. So you can have minor nations that are good, that are competitive, but that is the only one. If you look at other minor nations, with the possible exception of some of the Balkan nations, I'm looking at Romania and Hungary and Bulgaria, maybe. Minor nations are not that interesting. Finland is good, but Norway and Sweden and Denmark, Greece, Belgium, they're just not very good. And one of the issues is that they have that limited roster. They have very few units to choose from. They have basically no access to veterans at all. Sorry, going the wrong way, not paying attention here. So they can't go the veteran way, and they have got very little access to inexperienced horde-like units as well. So they can't go the horde way, so they're going to have to go the regulars way. And playing regulars, we've yet to crack the code for how to do that in a competitive setting. Next thing is, most of them have really crappy transport, tank and armored car options. Mostly because there's so few. I mean, if you go and look at the Danish one, there's basically like one option that's competitive enough that you can take it and make it sort of work. That's It's not good enough. You can't really design your lists. You can't make them into something that works. So, and then, so that was the limited roster, right? Then there's the national special rules, which for almost all of the minor nations are decidedly subpar. They are bad. They're not as bad as the Italian one, but they are bad. Most minor nations, you get no benefits for playing them. So basically you have a limited roster and no national benefits. So why would you play them if you're looking for competitiveness? There's no reason to do that. I mean, Belgium, you can take a free artillery piece, but you can do that as France with a much larger roster and better tanks. So why would you play Belgium? I feel like if Warlord Games could possibly make some national special rules that somehow distinguish each of these minor nations, they would be worth looking at, and we would possibly see them more than we do. Right now, we're only seeing them if people have like it's a gimmick thing, right? Last tournament we had a single player bring a Danish army, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, that's so cool!" But of course, he didn't win anything, so it wasn't a competitive choice. It was just because it was cool. I would like that it wasn't just because it was cool, but because you could actually do something with those minor nations. You can't. So what do? Well, you take the choices that are at least not subpar for their category. So don't waste points on LMGs, they're not worth it. Buy large units of regulars and train with them, see if you can make them work. 50 regular men, which is like 5 infantry choices, 10-man squads, that might be okay. And buy a lot of artillery. If you have if you're doing Belgiums, take the extra artillery piece, buy a medium mortar or a heavy mortar, buy a medium howitzer or a heavy howitzer, and then shoot the enemy before they approach you. It's the only way forward with minor nations. It is to go the shooty way and then hope to hell that it works. Because you can't do armor, you can't do hordes, you can't do close combat. Everyone else is better at you at those things. So yeah, that is what you do with minor nations in my eyes. And I'm sorry that this was not the whole full video that many of you had requested. I simply don't think it works. Sorry. Cheers.